A small white lion cub followed a policewoman begging for help. When she discovered why, she burst into tears. What would you do if on an ordinary day in a busy city park, a small, frightened creature appeared out of nowhere, silently pleading for your help? She was making her usual rounds, the routine steady and unremarkable, the hum of the city around her, joggers passing by, children playing and dogs chasing sticks. But then, beneath the tall shade of sprawling oaks, something caught her eye. A flash of white moving cautiously between the benches. At first, she thought it might be a dog, lost and scared. But as the figure stepped into the open light, her breath caught. A tiny white lion cub, its eyes wide with fear and confusion, stood trembling on the paved path. The cub's gaze locked with hers, unblinking and pleading. It trotted after her, weaving between legs and skirts, staying painfully close, yet careful not to seem threatening. No one else seemed to notice, or maybe they chose to ignore the odd sight. People carried on, busy with their lives, heads down behind screens or chatting, the white cub invisible to their eyes. But she could not ignore it. Her heart tightened as the cub's small body brushed against her leg, its soft whimpers barely audible over the city noise. Something was wrong. This was no ordinary stray animal lost in a park. The cub's desperate eyes spoke of loneliness, fear, and a silent cry for rescue that pierced the noise of the bustling world. Her instincts screamed. She had to help. Yet questions spun in her mind. Where did it come from? How did it survive here? Why did it choose her? As she crouched down, offering a gentle hand, the cub hesitated, then pressed forward, as if trusting her completely for the first time. In that fragile moment, the weight of that trust settled on her chest like a stone. And then the truth began to unravel, one she was not prepared for. What secrets did this tiny lion hide from the world? The answer would change everything. Sarah's mind wrestled with the mystery of the cub's appearance as she traced back the faint clues she could gather in the city's shadows. The white lion cub was no ordinary animal lost on its own. It belonged somewhere, a place it had been torn from or escaped. Her instincts guided her steps towards a narrow street lined with aging warehouses, their walls cracked and windows shadowed. One in particular stood out, a rusted door, locked but not well enough to hold secrets from someone observant. A low hum of noise echoed inside, betraying life within. Sarah's heart quickened as she approached. Inside, the air was thick and stale. The dim light barely revealed cages stacked carelessly, some empty, others containing frightened eyes reflecting her flashlight. The scent clung harshly, too sharp, too unnatural. From behind a large crate, a man's voice scraped the silence, heavy with frustration. The man was unmistakable, someone Sarah had heard whispers about, an animal handler known in town for rumors swirling around exotic creatures kept illegally. He spoke in clipped tones, avoiding direct answers when she quietly asked about the cub. His hands trembled as he fumbled with metal locks, moving swiftly to silence the cages, hiding signs of distress brought by careless neglect. The cub, Sarah learned from stolen glimpses of records and whispered hushes from nearby workers, was little more than a tool to draw crowds to private shows and black market deals. Sarah's stomach twisted. Profit, yes. But at what cost? The cub bore signs, faint cuts, dull eyes, a desperate need for care that the handler refused to meet. The man kept the animals sheltered only from authorities, not from suffering. He lived in shadows, hiding cruelty beneath smiles meant for the few who dared buy. Her mind reeled from the stark truth. This tiny creature, this silent plea for rescue, was a victim. The cub's small white frame hid stories of loneliness and fear, of dark nights spent chained, not wild. Sarah's breath caught as she realized the cub's escape was its only chance at survival, and why it had followed her. But the deeper, darker secret, the one that could unravel everything, was just ahead, waiting to be discovered. Officer Sarah stood by the edge of the park, under the pale glow of the street lamp, the quiet buzz of the city at night soft around her. The tiny white lion cub sat nervously at her feet, its milky eyes flickering with a mix of hope and fear. Sarah crouched beside it, letting her calm voice fill the stillness. She didn't know where the cub had come from or who it belonged to, but she knew one thing: she couldn't just leave it here. Her mind raced as she thought back to her patrols. She wasn't unfamiliar with emergencies, lost children, injured animals, calls for help, but this was different. A wild creature, torn from nature, confused in the middle of the city, vulnerable and trembling. The city was loud and busy, yet no one else seemed to notice. People passed by, eyes looking through the strange sight, heading toward their destinations as if nothing unusual had happened. Sarah's heart tightened. Why was no one stopping? Was it because they were scared, indifferent, or did they simply not want to get involved? She thought of the cub again, so small, so silent, but somehow insistent. It had followed her step by step, clinging to her presence, even when she tried to gently lead it away, almost like it trusted her, or was begging for something she couldn't refuse. She had questions. Where had this cub come from? Why was it alone in the city? Was it escape or abandonment? And most pressing of all, how could she protect it without knowing the risks? Sarah's usual confidence felt fragile now. She was certain she wanted to help, but doubt tugged at her. Could she keep this delicate creature safe? Would the law support her if she took responsibility? Would finding the owner mean justice or more harm? Her badge felt heavier on her chest. The cub looked up at her, hope shining in its fragile eyes. Somewhere deep inside, Sarah decided that she wasn't turning away. Not yet. Not while the cub needed her. But the city held secrets, and answers weren't guaranteed. The night air hung thick with a restless energy as Officer Sarah walked toward the shadowed edges of the industrial district, clutching the small collar she'd fashioned for the white lion cub from a strip of cloth. The city park was distant now, its laughter and stray dogs replaced by the cold whistle of the wind threading between rusted warehouses and shuttered doors. Every step brought a rising knot of tension in Sarah's chest. She wasn't just chasing a lead, she was stepping into the unknown. The address she'd found was vague, a cluttered warehouse on the corner of an abandoned alley, wrapped in flickering neon signs that painted the cracked pavement in splashes of blue and red. Sarah's breath hitched when she saw a faint silhouette behind frosted windows, a figure moving swiftly, deliberate. Her instincts told her this was no innocent caretaker, but something far more guarded and secretive. As she approached, the door creaked open silently and the man stepped out, lean, with sharp eyes that gleamed under the warehouse's dim light. His smile was thin, forced. "You really shouldn't be here," he warned softly, not threatening, but with a cold edge that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "What do you think you're looking for?" "I'm looking for the owner of a white lion cub," Sarah replied steadily, keeping her tone calm but firm. "I have reason to believe it might be here." The man's eyes darkened, a flicker of something like irritation or fear crossing his face. "I don't know what you're talking about. There's no cub here. You're mistaken." His voice was smooth, practiced, but Sarah was not so easily dismissed. She held up the collar. "This was on the cub. If it escaped from here, I need to know the truth." For a long moment they stared at each other, a silent war of wills beneath the harsh hum of the neon lights. Then with a bitter laugh, the man stepped back inside, closing the door just enough to trap Sarah's gaze. "You'd better be careful, officer. Some things are better off left alone." Sarah's heart pounded. The man's veiled warning only fueled her determination. This was the first real crack in the wall of silence, and she knew she had to push forward, no matter the cost. The cub had placed its fragile trust in her, and now, faced with shadows and guarded lies, Sarah would not let it down. The silence inside the warehouse was thick, almost suffocating, as Sarah carefully stepped through the cluttered space. Flickering overhead bulbs cast long, wavering shadows on the concrete floor, where cages lined the walls like forgotten relics. At first glance, the warehouse felt deserted, but something deep within Sarah's gut screamed otherwise. She was on the right track. Her hands trembled slightly as she found a dusty folder tucked beneath a pile of old crates. Inside were photographs and shaky videos, crudely taken, but impossible to ignore. The images revealed a harsh reality: the lion cub, white fur dulled and dirty, paced in a small, cramped cage, barely larger than its own curled body. Nearby, other animals, monkeys, birds, a large tiger, showed similar signs of neglect. Eyes dull, ribs faintly visible, movement slow and pained. Sarah's breath caught. Had this all been happening so close to the city, hidden behind these rusted doors? Questions exploded in her mind. How long had the cub been trapped here? Why did it risk everything to escape? Was the handler alone in this? Had others suffered in silence? The videos whispered secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. The handler's voice, rough and dismissive, echoed faintly as he barked orders to the animals. There was no tenderness, no care, only sharp commands and cold distance. Yet somewhere inside the grainy footage, the cub's wide, scared eyes found hers through the screen. It was a silent plea for rescue, trust laid bare. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility press down on her. Doubt crept in too. Was she doing the right thing by involving others? Could this be bigger than she imagined? Was the cub truly safe with her now? But the unmistakable flicker of hope in its gaze erased her hesitation. The cub had chosen her, had crossed dangerous boundaries for a chance at freedom. Despite the unknowns, Sarah knew she couldn't turn away. The truth was out, raw and painful, and the next step was clear. She would fight for the cub, and for all the silent creatures locked away in darkness, no matter what lay ahead. The weight on Sarah's shoulders grew heavier with every passing moment. She sat at her small kitchen table, the folder spread open before her, the images and videos playing out anew in her mind's eye. The evening sky outside had deepened to a soft indigo, but inside, her resolve burned like a bright flame. The cub's scared, trusting gaze had stayed with her. This was not just about one animal. It was about countless others trapped and forgotten, pleading silently for someone to take a stand. Sarah reached for her phone, fingers trembling, then steadied herself. It was time. She dialed the number for the city's Animal Protection Agency, a department she knew well from previous community outreach. Her voice was calm but firm as she explained the situation. The urgency, the neglected animals, the illegal nature of the operation. She laid it all out without hesitation. The person on the other end listened intently, promising swift action. Next, she contacted her trusted superior, a gentle yet decisive figure in the police force. Sarah knew this could unsettle some people, perhaps even bring unwanted scrutiny on her career, but she stood firm, unafraid to lay all the facts on the line. They agreed to coordinate efforts quietly. A rescue operation would be planned carefully. Discretion was key to ensure the safety of all involved, especially the animals. Throughout the night, Sarah worked tirelessly, gathering names, addresses, and support. Every call she made, every message she sent, reinforced her belief she was not alone in this fight. Her office was cluttered with notes, maps, and contact information, a tactical nerve center born out of necessity and fierce determination. In the midst of this, Sarah visited the cub once more. The little lion remained cautious but stayed close, as if sensing the change, the hope building around them. She knelt down, her voice soft and sure, promising protection and a future free from fear. Her job would be complicated from here on out. There were risks, uncertainties, and shadows waiting in the corners. But Sarah wasn't just chasing a case. She was giving a fragile life a second chance. And with that, the catalyst for change had been set in motion. She was ready to fight. The night air was thick with tension as Officer Sarah and the Animal Protection team moved quietly toward the warehouse. The city around them had fallen silent, the usual hums stilled by the weight of what was about to happen. Sarah's heart pounded, not from fear, but from determination. She knew the stakes were high. This was not just a simple raid, but a mission to rescue lives shackled by neglect and greed. As they approached the building, shadows shifted behind curtained windows. Suddenly a figure appeared at the door. It was the animal handler. His eyes burned with a mixture of anger and desperation. "You don't know what you're getting into," he said sharply, voice low but firm. "This isn't a game." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady. "We're here for the animals. They don't deserve to suffer." He paused, his face hardening. You think you can just come in and take them? You don't understand the consequences. His words carried a thinly veiled threat, more about control and power than safety. Suddenly, heard from behind, Sarah was a soft growl, low and cautious but firm. The white lion cub appeared at her side. Despite its size, the cub's presence filled the space with quiet strength. It watched the handler intently, eyes shining with fierce loyalty and trust toward Sarah. The cub's protective stance was unmistakable, as if it had found its guardian and refused to let harm come near. The tension in the air thickened, broken only by the handler's anxious sigh. The cub's unexpected intervention shifted the balance. It was no longer just Sarah alone against a desperate man. It was Sarah and the cub, a bond forged in trust and resilience. The handler's expression faltered. For a moment, doubt crept into his eyes. Sarah held her ground, sensing the moment. This was more than confrontation. It was the beginning of a silent challenge, a test of who truly cared for the animals and who would stand down. Inside, the cub pressed closer to Sarah, sensing the danger but unwavering in its protection. Together, they faced the unknown, and outside, the city waited. The rescue was just beginning. The cold weight of silence hung between them as the animal handler's eyes flickered toward the small white lion cub at Sarah's side. The tension stretched thin, fragile as glass. No one moved, no one spoke, until finally the handler's shoulders sagged with a sigh that seemed years too late. His defiance crumbled just enough to show cracks of uncertainty. I never wanted this to get out, he muttered, voice rough but quiet. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Sarah's gaze didn't waver. Then why hide it? Why let those animals suffer? He stared at the cub, its white fur almost glowing in the dim light. It's complicated, he admitted, his tone softer now, laced with something like regret. I thought I was protecting something valuable. I made mistakes, not with all the animals. Some, yes, but I never meant to hurt the cub. And the tension twisted inside Sarah. Could there be truth in his words? Was this man more prisoner of his own fear than a cruel villain? She didn't know. Trust was a fragile thing, especially here. Help us, Sarah said slowly. Help these animals get the care they deserve. You can still make it right. The handler's eyes darted nervously, his fingers twitching. And if I do, what happens to me? To everything I've built? Will you believe me? Doubt settled in the space between them, like lingering fog. Could he be sincere? Was this a genuine change of heart, or another layer of deception? The cub nudged Sarah's leg, steady and sure, a quiet reminder of what was at stake. Sarah allowed herself a moment's hesitation. The handler's expression was tangled. Fear, shame, hope. Somewhere beneath the surface, a decision was forming. All right, he finally whispered. I'll cooperate, but no promises beyond that. That fragile agreement was the first step toward redemption, but Sarah knew the road ahead would be uncertain and slow. Trust had to be rebuilt, one careful step at a time. The cub watched silently, as if understanding the gravity of this fragile alliance. In that warehouse's shadowed silence, hope was quietly taking root, delicate but real. The news spread quickly through the community, carrying a wave of relief and newfound hope. The illegal animal operation, once a tightly guarded secret, was now exposed and dismantled. Sarah and the white lion cub had become unlikely champions, symbols of resilience and change. The cub's story inspired many, sparking conversations about the hidden suffering animals endured and the urgent need for compassion. In the days that followed, the local sanctuary welcomed the cub with open arms. It was a place where healing began, where the wounds left by neglect started to fade under gentle care and patient understanding. Sarah visited often, her presence a promise that the cub was not forgotten, that someone would always stand for those who couldn't stand for themselves. The handler, once cloaked in denial, slowly transformed. His cooperation with the authorities marked the start of a difficult journey toward redemption. He volunteered his time to help with animal rehabilitation efforts, humbling himself before those he had wronged. It was not an easy path. Trust did not return overnight, but each small act of kindness he offered helped rebuild what had been broken. Together, Sarah, the handler, and the sanctuary team launched an awareness campaign. They spoke to schools, community groups, and local leaders. Their message was clear: respect for animals was a responsibility shared by all. Stories of the cubs' escape and rescue became a catalyst for change, encouraging others to report neglect and support conservation efforts. This mission united many hearts. The community learned that protecting animals was also about protecting hope, kindness, and the future. Through every conversation, every visit, and every action, Sarah and the cub reminded everyone that courage and compassion could rewrite even the darkest chapters. In this shared victory, new bonds formed. The cub's quiet strength and Sarah's unwavering dedication became a beacon, proof that change was possible when someone chose to stand up and act. The journey was far from over, but the promise of a better tomorrow had never felt more real. In the quiet corners of the sanctuary, where sunlight filtered softly through tall trees and birds sang gentle melodies, the small white lion cub began to heal. Every day was a new beginning, each moment filled with kindness, patience, and the steady reassurance of safety. The cub's once scared eyes now sparkled with a newfound trust, and its playful leaps echoed through the green fields, a living testament to survival and hope. Sarah's visits became a comforting ritual. She never came empty-handed. There were soft blankets, favorite treats, and quiet words spoken with affection. To the cub, she was more than a protector. She was a guardian who had answered a silent, desperate call. With every shared smile, every gentle touch, the invisible chains of fear loosened, replaced by a resilient spirit ready to embrace life again. Meanwhile, the community was awakening. Schools that once passed by stories of cruelty now welcomed lessons of compassion. Children's eyes widened as they listened to Sarah and the rehabilitated handler, both standing side by side, sharing their journey toward redemption and change. The story of the cub's escape wasn't just about an animal. It was about the power of courage, empathy, and the difference one voice can make. The handler, humbled and transformed, found a new purpose in helping others heal. Though he could never erase the past, his genuine efforts helped bridge the gap between guilt and forgiveness. Together with Sarah and the sanctuary team, they forged a mission that transcended personal mistakes, a mission to protect, to nurture, and to teach. In the end, the white lion cub was no longer just a symbol of survival. It was a bright beacon of hope, resilience, and compassion. Sarah's unwavering dedication had sparked a chain reaction, reminding everyone that real change begins with a single act of kindness. If this story touched you in some way, tell us in the comments which part spoke to your heart the most. What lesson do you think shines brightest from this journey? Subscribe to the channel. Your presence here makes all of this worthwhile. The next story might just inspire you even more.